Hello, welcome to Wild Horse Rides. My name is Frederick. Today we are going over editing. Remove vague, confusing writing.
Vague, confusing writing often results in wordiness and redundancy. The end result is a page full of weak words which fail to grab your reader's attention. Missing subjects are often a symptom of using ing verbs. Here's an example of a missing subject.
The spinning of the axe caused dizziness.
In this example, we don't know who spun the axe or why. It is far less interesting, and there's actually no subject in this sentence. Here's the correction.
The thoughtless barbarian spun the axe, reeling from the recoil of his throw.
Nominalization is the action of transforming verbs into nouns. Here's an example.
The spinning of the thoughtless barbarian's axe.
Once again, this sentence does not have a true subject. The action of the axe becomes the subject rather than the barbarian himself. Here's the corrected version.
The thoughtless barbarian spun his axe, sending it flying into his enemy's cup of mead.
Pronouns become jumbled when they are used indistinctly. Here's an example of jumbled pronouns.
The barbarian slammed his cup down in front of the barman. He was upset, but then he picked up the cup, reached behind the counter, and filled it. He guzzled down the mead in the blink of an eye. He shook his head, disgusted.
Who is doing what? Because the characters are the same gender, using pronouns alone makes it nearly impossible to follow the action in the scene. Here's the corrected version.
The thoughtless barbarian slammed his cup down in front of the barman. The barbarian was upset, but then the barman picked up the cup, reached behind the counter, and filled it. The barbarian guzzled down the mead in the blink of an eye. The barman shook his head, disgusted.
Passive voice is when the object of a sentence becomes the subject. Here's an example.
The face was punched by the thoughtless barbarian.
The reader spends the first few moments trying to figure out who punched the face and who the face belongs to. Passages written in passive voice tend to be wordy and confusing. The action of a sentence is lost, and so is the reader's interest. The main red flag for passive voice is the overuse of the word by. Here would be a corrected version of the sentence.
The barbarian punched the barbarian's face.
Should've, could've, would've writing occurs when the writer describes the potential action of a character while they are performing it. Here's an example.
She could see the thoughtless barbarian in the distance. Her heart could have leapt out of her chest. Olaf was her true love.
This type of writing makes the action impersonal and puts the reader in the backseat rather than up close to the action. It is boring and wordy. Here's the corrected version.
Olaf charged forth, clutching a bouquet of wild lavender and baby's breath. Susan's heart leapt. Olaf was her true love.
An outside-of-the-body experience is an ill-fated attempt at drawing the reader closer to the character and action by saying how they felt and what they thought rather than just describing the action. Here's an example.
Olaf charged forth, clutching a bouquet of wild lavender and baby's breath. Susan felt her heart leap. She paused, thinking to herself, Olaf was her true love, the only man who ever understood her.
Most people don't think about the fact that they are thinking. It makes the writing seem impersonal and breaks the connection the reader has with the character. Describing the action this way bogs down the story with unnecessary words and slows the action down. Here's the correction.
Olaf charged forth, clutching a bouquet of wild lavender and baby's breath. Susan's heart leapt. Olaf was her true love, the only man who ever understood her.
Avoid repetitive descriptions.
Some nouns or verbs are self-explanatory. You should never describe nouns which already have implied traits or detail the action of a verb. Here are some examples.
Thoughtless barbarian, rugged cowboy, small chihuahua, made a fist with his hands, typed with his hands, rapped in the song.
These descriptions are unnecessary because most of your audience is familiar with stereotypes and already have an idea of which body parts are involved in mundane action. You can use these stereotypes and common gestures to your advantage, making your writing cleaner and neater. Instead of describing how your barbarian makes a fist, you can spend your time describing his cowl, his flaring nostrils, and ultimately the damage his raging fist causes. Here are the corrected terms.
Barbarian, cowboy, chihuahua, he made a fist, he typed, she rapped.
Get rid of your travelogue.
Describing journeys become travelogue when author describes every inch of the road traveled, including every meal, how much water they drank, and how many times they had to leave themselves in the forest. Here's an example of a travelogue.
The thoughtless barbarians made their way through the coconut forest by foot. The first barbarian caught a fish with a lure carved out of a coconut shell and decorated with googly eyes. It took about 20 minutes to cook the fish. Meanwhile, the other barbarians enjoyed a relaxing dip in the river. One of them washed the glowing cloths. On day 2, and on and on and on.
Who cares how many times your characters wash their underwear during the trip? Unless a significant event happens, there is no need to mention what occurs on the road. What happens in the forest stays in the forest. You don't need to make random enemies show up every couple of pages to keep your readers entertained and show off your characters' battle prowess. Simply save all those details for the true villains and threats they encounter on the other side of that desert or forest. If you intend to use the journey to strengthen your character, both physically and mentally, then leave out the mundane details about toothbrushing or hair braiding. For example, if you are writing a survivalist story, the deserted island or treacherous canyons become the villain rather than an actual character. Here's a corrected version of the previous paragraph.
The journey through Stand in My Pants Valley was arduous, but the party of thoughtless barbarians arrived at the bar relatively unscathed 3 days later.
Say cheese!
Some novice writers add smiles to every interaction between characters. Here's an example.
Susan smiled, sniffing the bouquet. Olaf was dreamy. She stared up at him, smiling. Olaf smiled back. The other barbarians smiled at them, their hearts touched by the obvious love between the two.
Why is everyone so happy? Most readers are unaccustomed to seeing everyone they meet smiling. Even if you live in the deep south, if you smile too hard or too often, people will begin to have questions about your sanity. Unless someone is taking a group photo, your entire cast of characters should never be smiling at one another even after a victory. Here's a corrected version of the previous paragraph.
Susan sniffed the bouquet. Olaf was dreamy. She stared into his glassy blue eyes. Olaf wrapped his huge arm around her waist, drawing her closer to him. There was a buzz at the bar. Several of the other barbarians began making animal noises and obscene gestures. It was good to be in their company once again.
Finally, remove any long-winded passages.
You should never link sentences upon sentences without giving the reader a break. Here's an example.
Olaf was kind by nature despite his drunken rages. He enjoyed playing shuffleboard with the other barbarians, which tended to make him very popular, at least in the eyes of the barbarians, and he also helped rescue several cats from, you guessed it, a burning building, which accomplished two things, building character and learning to appreciate furry friends far more than before, along with honing his climbing skills.
By the time the reader gets through this maze, they will have lost interest in what was being said. Vary sentence structure to keep your readers interested. You can also use sentence structure as a tool to liven up your action scenes and add drama. Shorter sentences make the flow of action in a fight scene far more gripping and brutal. Having characters speak to each other using one-liners can illustrate a breakdown in a relationship. Do not flood the reader's vision with a wall of text. It is unpleasant to the eye. Here is a potentially corrected version.
Olaf was kind by nature despite his drunken rages. He enjoyed shuffleboard with his friends, which made him very popular. He also rescued cats from burning buildings. In doing so, he learned to appreciate animals and improved his character and physique.
If you liked our video, please like and subscribe. If there's any topic you want us to cover, please leave it in the comments below. Thank you.